So you're not going to see the current grant that you have in the system. You can't see a couple years back, et cetera. It'll just be what you initiate now in gears for applications moving forward. And that will be October 1st through September 30th. So if you do have a DRE going to training in August and September, there's another class. That's going to be outside of gears, and you'll be working with Sue to do that piece with her, because she oversees the DRE impaired driving projects and our media. So I started to mention earlier that our priorities come from NHTSA. So they have said, by doing a whole host of statistical analysis, that you need to give out your money to areas that have a problem. So if you have activity sheets where there's not a lot of activity going on for enforcement, they're looking at those with our program coordinators and they're questioning us. So restraint use in the state, so that could be bicycle helmets, child passenger safeties in the room, with car seats, motorcycle helmets. We have a program about motorcycle safety, occupant protection in the form of seat belts. Our rate went down 20 to 80%, down from about 86%, because each year we have to do a seatbelt survey. So we're looking at OP tickets and saying, last year the state, within the last 2 years, right, Betsy, it went down by about half of the OP tickets that enforcement has been writing. So those are the types of things that they question us and ask us to rationalize in our highway safety plan. In the impaired driving section, Scott was saying yesterday that nationally 50% or 30% of crashes have an impaired driver, and Vermont's at about 50%. So we're moving in the wrong direction. And then of course, speed and aggressive driving, our law is new, October 1st, 2014. So we're getting questioned by our legislature routinely how many tickets have been written for handheld devices. They're wondering how much grant work we've done. Those types of questions are continually being asked of us. And of course, as you all know, these don't stand alone. When you're out doing enforcement and education, all of these things touch each other and interchange. The critical emphasis areas for the state just changed in the 2017 to 2021 Strategic Highway Safety Plan written by the Vermont Highway Safety Alliance. The beautiful thing about having highway safety at VTrans is we sit next to a lot of the people who are on this board and helped write this document, and we had influences in it as well. So we take our highway safety plan and we have to create performance measures and goals off from the Strategic Highway Safety Plan. So that in turn, when it comes to you applying, you'll want to be aware of these as well as our highway safety plan, because it's the trickle-down effect. So these 7 areas have not changed. However, they decided to get very specific with the subcategories, and they also put in some more aggressive goals for the state as a whole.
All right, so step over this and not trip. There we go. Application components, they have not changed. You still need to have a problem statement. You need to develop your project goals and objectives. Develop your performance measures, any timelines that your project has. Logic models go with the education grants, so they'll be familiar with that, but OP and DUI grants do not have a logic model. An evaluation plan, and then the resources that are required to run your program. Some cost principles. Costs must be allowable, necessary for your project to operate, and you can make sure you're not in violation of any federal, state, or local laws. Some application guidance information. We are now, as of last summer, operating under the FAST Act funds through NHTSA. We're no longer under MAP 21. Well, we're still using up some MAP 21 funds, but we are under the regulations of FAST Act. If you want to read something really exciting, you can go to 23 CFR 1300 and find the federal regulations there. And also, you can find any federal regulations at 2 CFR 200 as well. The grant applications will be due Friday, April 28th by 3 p.m. all grant applications have to be submitted in gears by your authorized official by 3 p.m. and there is that actual cutoff. We will not be able to accept applications after that, except for the DRE, which is a rolling one. As always, we have data-driven approaches. Here are a few places to find certain data, and as always, Mandy White is in our office at VTrans. There's her email and phone number. For OP and DUI grants, we did run the data like we did last year, so we have some preloaded data for you, and I'll show you where that document is in the system once we sign into gears. Review and award. So once you hit submit on your applications, we will be putting together committees to go over each application type. So we'll have an education committee, we'll have a law enforcement committee, and we will be judging applications based on past performance, past spending, reporting accuracy, and timeliness. The match. So for OP and DUI grants, this is going to be a lot easier this year. Last year we took out match that you guys needed to provide from the DUI grants, but this year OP and DUI do not need to provide match to us. Education grants do still need to provide match, the 20%, the same federal calculation that has been going on for years. And the match requirements can be met through operating costs, indirect costs, or third-party personal service and goods. So amendments are we're looking at them a little bit differently this year. We have done a very good job of spending our carry forward. So pretty soon, in a couple of years, this program will really only be run on $4 million a year. We still have carry forward, but we're going to be getting a little bit leaner as we go on throughout the years. So amendments will be offered for under losing my words. Special circumstances. There we go. Thank you. I blame him for taking words out of my mouth sometimes. So what we are asking is, and we mentioned this last year, but this year we're really trying to put the point forward that really look at your budget for the year and really try to ask for all the funds that you need and justify that in your application right now. Because it will be a little bit leaner as we go through the years. Reimbursement forms, a lot of times in this training that we have, we'll do some financial pieces, but we're actually not going to do that this time around because we're still building those forms in gears. We are basing most of our gears work on the paperwork that we do now, so they shouldn't actually look too differently, and there won't be much different in reporting. It's just going to be in the gear system. So I'm just not really going to go over it until we actually have it in the system, and then we'll have our manuals, and we'll go over that in the end of. Well, we'll start the end of August. We'll probably put out the dates for those next trainings.
Last July, we were approached by an IT program computer specialist from VTrans about getting this project off the ground, and she has been incredible at helping us build the system. So when we talked about how we were going to do this, IntelliGrants has been around. It's in like 15 or 18 different highway safety offices. We did a lot of research with her. We put out an RFP. We picked this company based on their reputation and their ability to do highway safety projects. It's one of the main reasons. And from pretty much that point on, we have decided to take things very slowly. So we're only releasing the application first, and we've built it thinking about how is this going to affect state agencies? How is this going to affect county sheriff's departments, municipalities? And then we just got a little curveball in that ACCD said, hey, community development, we want to work with you on this project to save some money. So we've worked all around that, and we hopefully have come up with a very good solution that we're going to present to you today. The way things are going to happen as the application, now that it's built, it's going to go through a review process, and that piece has been built as well. but now we're actually going to move towards building the full grant agreement. So you're starting that by doing this application. So your performance measures, scope of work, all of those things that you type into this system, we're going to work together and create your final grant agreement. So what's going to happen is on April 28th, that's when everything but the DRE grant applications close. So you'll want to be sure, because people are going to have different roles. So financial officer, project director, authorized official, which are typically your either commissioner for state agencies or secretary, or your town treasurer or your chief or sheriff. Just make sure that they're in the office that day if you wait until the final day, because you'll need them to hit submit. They're going to be the only ones who are able to do that. So after the grant application closes, between April 29th and 10/1, we're going to probably require maybe a modification, maybe not, to the grant application. So if we do, your program coordinator, Betsy, Jim, and Sue, may be reaching out to you. So we were using education because a lot of law enforcement is pretty cut and dry with the OP and DUI, but for education, you might write something like, we're going to do events at a high school. Okay, great. But we might need to know how many you're going to do, what time of year are you going to go out and do them, how many people you expect to reach. So Betsy may be communicating with Tanya at VDH to get those details, because that way it gets swept into the final version of the grant agreement.
Do you have any suggestions of some of those things that you might look for that we can just make sure to?
You guys have a solid,
Okay.
yeah. We know your program.
Okay.
You guys, yeah. SMART goals. Those kind of,
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at your current grant agreement and look at your scope of work on how it's written, that we base your current scope of work for this year based on your grant agreement, your grant application from last year, and that might be a good way to judge the strength of your project description and your performance measures as well.
So those modifications will go back and forth a few times, maybe, or maybe there won't be any. From May to early June, we already have some dates where internally, on the enforcement side, we're going to have a chief, a sheriff, maybe VSP, a few people from the GHSP staff. We'll score. We have a score sheet within years. It's fantastic. We're just going to have everything in one place on our side, too, so we're benefiting from this as well. And education will also have their own review committee. So sometimes we've had somebody from AAA, sometimes there's a education grantee already and they just recuse themselves for that when we talk about their application, and then we have GHSP staff. So we may require more modifications after they meet, we'll see. And then July 3rd is a deadline for highway safety staff. So that's the date, because the first falls on a Saturday, and with the FAST Act, we have to submit by July 3rd. So we will have our plan in by that date, which I know always seems backwards because we write our plan after we do the applications, but it's just the way it falls. And then in July, we have other people within VTrans doing some work. So there's things like risk assessments and other kinds of background checks on the agency that we have to do to sub-grant out to other municipalities and state agencies and such. So they're going to be doing some work in gears, helping us do the build in that piece, but your point of contacts will always be your program coordinators. They won't be reaching out to you. And then the wonderful thing with the FAST Act is this August 18th date, and that is the date that we should know, because federal law says that NHTSA now has to respond to us with from our highway safety plan. So they have to either approve, deny, or ask us for modifications to our projects by that date. And they didn't, up until like 2 years ago, they didn't have to do that in 4 to 5 days. They pretty much told us sometimes it was right around mid-September when we finally hear back from them. And so it's really nice that the state has kind of some pushback there with that federal regulation. And then in late August, Danielle will be back, her little boy will be born, and she'll be back in the office, and as a staff we're going to set up some trainings for quarterly progress report training and financial training. So we will do more in-person trainings like this, because webinars just are not gonna, we'd rather do this right and teach everybody together, and that way, everybody's all on the same page and not trying to figure it out the first time around. Maybe next year we can offer some webinars, we most likely will be able to. And then in early September, we'll roll out those dates. Probably do a sign-up genius again. So just to reiterate, education grants, your point of contact will be Betsy, and with law enforcement will be Jim, and for DRE grants through the system will be Sue. And then supplemental health, our law enforcement liaisons for enforcement are Tom and Paul, who I mentioned at the beginning. And then you also have Scott, Danielle, and myself as added support. And Danielle's going to run you through the development side of years. And then we'll have you log in